what else could we provide. And we spoke at the superintendent's cabinet, and I think there's discussions that started saying what could we do something with elementary, and what would that look like? And so I kind of got started thinking about what would an all online program look like here in the district. And so I think it was just last Friday that we got the green/yellow light to really explore online elementary and what that could possibly mean. And so that is what I'm going to be talking about today, is kind of taking a look at what elementary would mean, and then also what a K-12 program would look like. And what I'm looking for would be just some feedback on that. And then in the presentation, I will identify some of the feedback that I'm looking for. So Jake, if you could share that, share the screen, and we could start off with slide number 3.
Okay, I'll do that. And what we did, I accidentally put in the video to the link. So I put up the slides now. So I think that'll be the right one for everybody. And also, just so you're aware, I did hit the record button because I forgot, and thought it would be helpful to maybe some folks, if they missed it, to record it. And if people want to watch back, they can give us some feedback as well. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll go to slide 3. Is this the one you're thinking of, Yang?
Nope, that's not the one. The one I shared,
Okay.
The link I shared directly with you, that one is more for, that has the information the group probably doesn't need.
Okay, got it.
That's the one. So
okay.
That video was just for people who aren't here. I just recorded something that kind of talks about what I'm going to talk about. So you don't have to play the video. You can just go to slide 3.
Should I just move it forward?
Nope, go to slide 3. So if you go to the bottom.
Oh, I can even move. Oh,
yeah, that was just an embedded video.
Oops.
Yep. So
sorry.
Nope, no worries.
Do I move it through just with this?
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
cool.
There we go. So we're just going to do a SWOT analysis of the proposal. We're looking for strengths of the proposal, weaknesses, but I think the biggest thing is looking for opportunities. What trends or practices are we aware of when it comes to online learning that we feel would be good if we can explore that and see what it would look like in our own program? If we've identified weaknesses, how do we turn those weaknesses into areas of strengths for ourselves? And are there any external factors that we should be aware of and take into consideration so that we can address them in order to strengthen our proposal? The other thing is threats. What are obstacles that we need to address to ensure proper implementation of the proposal? What do we need to minimize in terms of the obstacles so that we can implement the proposal? And are there external threats outside that we need to consider as well? So those are really the 4 areas of, that I would like you to provide some feedback on. And I also want to say that this proposal is a very, if we think about it, it doesn't have a lot of details. It's more of a bird's eye view of programming. So there are still a lot of unanswered questions. There are still a lot of scenarios we have to work towards. And this is a part of that process in order to help us to get into those more fine-tuned ideas. And this is just a proposal. It is it was an idea from which we can start up from so that we can have something to see, so we can chew on the ideas in order to make it into what we as a district would like the online learning program to look like. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into it. Jake, if you go to slide 4, I just want to introduce 2 vocabulary words that will be important for us to understand as we go through this proposal. Because there are 2 programming that we're looking at offering. One is considered a comprehensive and one is considered a supplemental. So an easy way of thinking about what comprehensive is that students will be taking all their courses online, and there's a sort of programming that goes with it. So it's kind of like its own school or program, kind of like if you think of dual language immersion within a school, it's kind of like that kind of programming, and all the students goes through that program together and those courses together. Supplemental are what we call a la carte courses that students can take, and they don't necessarily have to be fully online. So these are where students could be attending RAWs full time, but 1 or 2 of their classes are online and the majority of their other classes will be in person. So that's the difference between comprehensive and supplemental. Any questions about those 2 terminologies before we move forward? I am a teacher, so I'm doing wait time here. All right, Jake, so let's go to the next slide. And so this is now really diving into the elementary proposal. And so I took data from what other schools are doing with their online program. I took a look at what we did with our distance learning. And one of the big thing I want to address is that even though we've got components of what we saw happening in distance learning, online learning is definitely different from distance learning, not only from the student experience, but also from what teachers are expected to do, and the type of programming and the type of experience that teachers are creating for students will be different from distance learning as well. And so the elementary program is meant to be a comprehensive program. So if you're an elementary online learner, all of your learning is done online. It is a K-6 program that what I want to explore and take a look at is, especially since they're on online already, if we can look at ways to do computational thinking within the curriculum, with younger grades, taking a look at how do we still implement a lot of toolkits and manipulatives to support learning. So just because they have that face-to-face time with teachers online and they're doing a lot of learning online, they still have resources that is tactile and they can move around and they have it with them, and it's not just all digital. I was also exploring what is Montessori, and there's actually a lot of online Montessori programs. And so trying to learn from them on how do they implement their strategies in an online format to still help their students to have independence, because we want to create a program that, you know, maybe when they start the program in kindergarten, first, second grade, they are still a little bit more dependent on what they call learning advocates or family members or parents or whoever is the adult in that space to help them. But we want to increase their independence so that as they grow through the program, they become more independent learners and don't need as much assistance from the adults in their life to help them with schools with the program. We're taking a look at how do we still create community for our online learners, and taking a look at how do we do whole program Zooms that can support extension learning. So I've looked at other programs where they do, you know, whole school Zooms together, where they invite guest speakers and guest authors, or they do virtual trips to the zoo, but they also still provide optional park community center meetups so that students who are in that online space can actually meet face-to-face in physical settings. And one of the things that I've learned from not just charter schools, but look at online schools is it's not about, a lot of it isn't about like the cool thing that attracts students to that, but it's about the type of community that these programs can develop with the students and families that are there. And so that's one of the things that I really want to explore in developing these elementary online programs, as well as middle and high school. And so this is just kind of like a rough outline of elementary. This is the schedule here is not concrete. It's just taking a look at what it could potentially look like, and it was also required by MDE to create. But I've also since then found other schedules I think that would work great for this. And so if you have any questions about the elementary or questions about the schedule, I'll take those questions now, because I just don't want people to forget as we go.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I might have missed where you mentioned the distinction, but if you could go back, so how is this exactly not distance learning? This online learning would be happening in their homes, in their rooms.
Yep.
And they're not going to be around their peers.
Yes.
Correct. So I guess I still understand how this isn't distance learning.
Yeah, definitely. So when we did this, distance learning is not a choice. The distance learning, it's kind of like in circumstances we had to go into distance learning and do that. With online learning, it is a choice that you enroll in this program if you want to. It is optional. We cannot force anybody to join this program. In distance learning, we had to, the curriculum that was provided was not necessarily the full curriculum that students received. So for example, last year I taught about 60% of my curriculum versus 100%, whereas online learning, the expectation is we're doing full curriculum that anybody in person would have. In distance learning, it was the teachers and the teams that kind of decided what they want to do. In this comprehensive program, there is going to be programming that spells out what K6 looks like. And so those are the nuances of distance and online learning. So yes, the concept of you are in your home and you're learning, some of it being online and some being synchronous and some being asynchronous, those are similar to distance learning. But the philosophy and the programming of what it looks like, it will be different than what the experience was with distance learning that was employed in the last year and a half.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Dr. Cheng, I have a question, and this may be colored by the enrollment data that we also reviewed.
Yeah.
Couldn't help but notice that enrollment is down, right? So is something like offering this option a hope to capture some of the enrollment that maybe left the district, or is this a need that we're hearing from students and parents that they would like to just do it, otherwise they would leave the district? I'm just curious, sort of with this offering, is this hopefully an effort to boost that enrollment back or to keep current students?
That is one of the hopes, is to keep the enrollment, to boost enrollment. We haven't done a lot of survey data with at the elementary level. So this is just at the elementary level. It is more to capture and keep students and to recover students that we have lost. But we have done data at the secondary level, and we had about 30% of students saying they wish they had online learning currently, or they wish they had online learning currently, or they want to at least experience what online learning would be like.
Got it.
So we don't have much data on elementary, but we do have it at the high school level.
I can give a little feedback. Since we aren't out of the pandemic yet, of course, it's sort of, everything's sort of jaded by that, I think, as we talk about online learning. But I have had several families ask about it. And we have had to refer families to other districts. So St. Paul has online learning this year, and so does Whiteberry Lake. So that always doesn't feel great if that is what they're asking and we don't have an option for that. So, and I don't think all of that is pandemic driven. So I would say that I think there is some interest out there anyway in online learning.
Yeah, and I did not want to put in data that we had last year in terms of connecting it back to pandemic to distance learning. But if we take a look at some of that distance learning data from last year of families wanting distance learning, we had enough students, but throughout the district, that could have created these grade bands that we are suggesting for this upcoming year. And so that's why we said, you know what, let's start off with kind of what we knew of families that wanted it from distance learning option, and see if we offer it as an online programming, if we can capture that many families as well. And so that's why we are suggesting having so for next year, it's not necessarily K2, it's actually going to be grades 1, 2, grades 3, 4, and grades 5, 6.
I do have a question, just on the naming of it. As a parent, to me that would be kind of confusing. So I guess my question is distance learning going to kind of verbiage of that going to fade away and move more onto the online verbiage, just so it's not so confusing?
Yes. That's my hope.
Sorry,
yes.
I just kind of caught me off guard. So I was glad Todd asked that question. So
Yeah, we definitely have the feeling of distance learning really impacts people in a lot of different ways, whether they're oh, that's really enticing, or that's, oh, wow, that was traumatic. And so I do think also that having the distance learning and doing that experience opened our eyes to the possibilities of doing something like this too. And a lot of feedback that we heard from families that said, this just really works for our family and how we do things. So it is a possibility that we have been looking at, but now have more, I guess, drive behind it too. And Dr. Cheng is really helping to put that together into a plan.
Mhm.
I had a question, Dr. Chang. I wonder if you've done research or in looking at this, any data showing kind of what the optimal time is, especially dependent on age, for a kid to be sitting in the chair, looking at a screen and focusing. Because I had, two different kids do distance learning at 2 different ages.
Yep.
And obviously my older kid could sit for like this proposed schedule. I know it's just a proposal, but for an hour and a half and do work. But certainly my younger kid, who was in a 1st and 2nd grade during much of distance learning, could not sit for an hour and a half. So I wonder if that's going to be taken into account with some of this, or what your research has shown.
Yeah, that will be taken into account. Some of the research I've looked for hasn't looked at the younger learners, more at the secondary, because that was initially my focus. So I do know that there is a sliding scale of engagement on screen. So that will be taken into consideration when we really finalize what the different age bands will be experiencing online.
Great.
Yeah.
And that is another thing too that we're looking at, is some successful programs that we know of around the state and around the world and around the country as well too.
Other questions from the slide?
Yeah, I just have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious to know students who are English learners and special education.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work?
Yeah, definitely. So we will have, if they receive those services in a comprehensive program, they will receive that type of services too. We are exploring to see what that would look like. I know firsthand, my own child is on an IEP. And so one of the ways that they've done that is depending upon their services, they also have times that they meet with their case manager. So for example, my son, instead of math time with his class, during that time, his case manager did a different Zoom with him to do math and to do his services that way. So it'll look differently than what it does in person. But that's something that we're still exploring, and it'll look differently depending on the need of that student. So we can't say exactly what everything would look like, but what we can commit to is the services that they would be provided in the building is the type of services, similar services that they'll be provided online as well.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'll just share this too, working specifically more at the secondary level, especially with our EL learners. One of the ways that we're trying to build their capacity, if they want to explore this option for the future, and for just going beyond high school, if they are, when they go into post-secondary, into college, and knowing that there are online classes that they may have to take. We're trying to build capacity by introducing the concept of the skill sets that they would need to be successful in online learning class within their programming. So for example, this semester, I'm working with one of the EL teachers, and we're teaching an academic tech skills class together, in which about 20 minutes of their time is doing kind of like their EL content. And then the 40 minutes, we take some of their EL content, but connect that with some technology competencies, so that they're learning how to do discussion posts, they're learning how to create digital media, so that, and these are students in levels 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. And so at least when they're being introduced at the younger levels, eventually when they get higher and they have more, they feel more confident in their abilities, they have this technology capacity to explore these online courses. So those are some of the things that we also want to implement into not just the online programming, but also into our in-person courses, so that just like, even though students might not know what they want to college, we want to make sure that they have the skill sets in order to go. Very similar, if you don't know if you want to take online learning, we want you to have some of that skill set, so that if you do, the technology skill set is not what makes or break your experience. Other questions? All right, if not, let's move on to the next slide. And this is kind of like a big brush of what I'm looking at, what secondary could look like. And so we're taking a look at creating a comprehensive experience for 7-12, but the true comprehensive program will come at grades 7-10, and 11-12 will have a fully online based experience based on supplemental courses that we offer. Along with this, we'll still offer a supplemental 9-12 program as well. And at the 7-10 program, because like I said, what makes a program successful is the type of community that you create with your students in this type of programming. And so I want to explore, you know, in grade 7-10, can we have some kind of synchronous intergrade interdisciplinary project-based learning that is created for grade 7-10 so that they have their community of learners focus on this, which will be a different kind of experience than in person, but it's what makes them unique, And with this to happen, we would have 1.0 FTEs at the core English, math, science, social studies, but having it so that it is a comprehensive K-12 program that we can also employ art, music, and Phi-Ed full-time online as well. And then as we go through this, creating these programs, I also want us to explore how can we use online learning to support credit recovery as well. So those are kind of like the big overall ideas of that. And some people might ask the question, wait, why are you only doing 7-10 comprehensive and allowing 11-12 to just be supplemental? And the big reason behind this is that, you know, a lot of the supplemental courses are going to be driven by what the students in person demand. And so for us, we found that most of the demands for online learning comes from the 11th and 12th grade. And so I feel confident that in 11th, 12th grade, we will have enough courses that if those grades want to be online, they can based on just the supplemental offerings. But at the 9-10 level, there's less, students feel less confident and have less interest in doing online. I don't know if it's jaded by distance learning or if it's, you know, what it is, but so there's less. So in order to ensure that students who do want to do a comprehensive 9-10 program, we had to include that into our comprehensive programming so that we have so that way we can schedule that 1.0 FTE to support those students in the 7-12 and in the grade 7-10 to be fully online. So that's the rationale behind that. Questions about that?
When I think one thing to just make sure that to clarify as well, like the comprehensive piece will be built over the next 5 years.
Yep. So if we go to the next,
yeah, okay.
Okay, next schedule, it will kind of show the timeline.
Sure, there you go.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just go into this and then I can take questions. And so year 1 would be next school year. And we are exploring that option of doing that grades 1 through 6 comprehensive. And we have already set in motion on 9-12 being supplemental. There are 18 courses currently being offered as online courses. Majority of those are the math, English, social studies required courses, and then some elective courses. So we had a total of 18 altogether. In year 2, we're taking a look at implementing K-6 comprehensive, so adding kindergarten to that 1-6. And then at the secondary level, we're only taking a look at 11th to 12th grade, all 11th, 12th grade courses being offered online. So this next school year, science wasn't ready to offer courses online yet, so they don't have any courses in the offering. But by year 2, the expectation is that all 11th and 12th grade required courses are online. In year 3, so K-6 would have been established. This is where we introduced 7-8 comprehensive to start programming there. At the 9-12 level, continuing supplemental, but at this point, we are allowing 10th grade to introduce courses that they want to try offering online. And then also in this year, we want to pull in enough elective courses so that students in grades 11-12, if they want to be fully online, they can based on these supplemental courses that we are offering. Year 3, we want to start exploring what credit recovery could look like and how we can do that in an online setting. Year 4, the only real new thing is that now 9th grade will be trying out courses online for the courses that want to try it online. We're gonna give them that option to do that. Year 5, the new thing is 9th grade now will enter into our grade 7-9 comprehensive program. And then this is also the year that special ed and EL courses that want to try their courses online will provide support for them to do that as well. And I know in other settings, people have been asking, why is SPED and EL so late to the game into this? And the reason for this is I think SPED and EL have different parameters and criteria for their courses that they have to do. And so I also want, so they're further out because I want to also, in those from year 1 through 4, I really want to help teachers to start doing these practices like I talked about with the L course, with the academic skills tech course that I'm helping co-design there, to start implementing those skills into their courses so that their students and their teachers build capacity to know how to teach online, and their students develop the skills to take online courses, so that by year 5, when we do offer it, we have enough students and teachers who feel confident enough in their skill sets in order to have more success in running an online course. And so that's why they are later in the implementation year. And then year 6 is the year that I hope to have a fully K-10 comprehensive program, and our 9-12 supplemental program should be up and running. And so that's kind of like the timeline that that was proposed. And so questions, comments, considerations, clarification.
I think this is great, and Yang, you're amazing. So having worked with you, you do a great job, and it's what's needed. My only concern, and this isn't speaking to this necessarily, but I think in education, especially in the day and age, like, let's keep up with the Joneses. We try to be everything to everybody, and we want to strive for that, but we also have to do the thing well. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I feel like we are in times where everyone is spread so thin, and who is going to execute all of this? Who is going to do all of this?
Yes.
Because I want this to go really well. And I know if you're behind it, it will, but I just worry we keep throwing out the newest, greatest thing, but it's not supported. It's not executed well. There isn't the wherewithal to make it well. I don't know. So I don't know. I want us to keep being great for everybody, but when you try to do too much, then nobody's doing well at anything.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That is just a great concern. It's not necessarily speaking directly to this. It's just kind of where my brain is at with our district, where we're headed sometimes with things, and where so many districts are headed right now. We're just trying to appease everybody, but we're not really doing the main things.
Yeah.
I don't know how to speak to that.
I totally hear you, Greg, on that, and being spread thin and wanting to make sure that we all have capacity, right, in order to do that, because I believe we as a district have the capabilities to do it, but the capacity to do it will be different. And one of the things I was considering in terms of designing this kind of like timeline, is that I wanted to make sure that we build capacity, in order to do it, so that we're not just out of the gate running saying we are doing a fully, full program next year. As you can see in the timeline, it is kind of, spaced out. Elementary seems like it's really fast, but we were thinking about that and saying, if we do this, it is not all of elementary teachers that need to take this on. We really just need 3 elementary teachers that said, you know what, I want to do that. I want to explore that. I want to be a part of that process. And so those are some of the, whereas, at the secondary level, we need more people on board. So therefore we are spacing it out and timing it out so that we are building teachers and students' capacity to do this. And then eventually, once the program is fully running, it's not all teachers that have to do this. We have dedicated full-time teachers who are working with the online program. And then we'll just have supplemental courses at the high school level for teachers who want to teach these courses. And so I totally hear you on that.
And not to dominate, just one other thought, like working with the groups that I work with. I hate the word at risk. I think that's a stupid word, sorry. But they are labeled in that capacity a lot of times, like AVID, like our connections program here at the high school. And I think of FOZ. I know Maureen is on as well. Like, how have you seen, because I'm sure they're out there, are there successful programs, like online programs for those types of programs and initiatives and groupings, I guess, so to speak, because I'm curious about that, because community is something that's so important to those groups and being present.
I will have to say I haven't found a lot of programming specifically for what would be considered like what labeled as at risk students. But what I will say is that we want students to have choice in this, whether you are, regardless of what your label is, so that you have a choice to experience this if you want to, and see if this is a program that's right for you. The great thing about online learning is that it meets so many different people's needs that I can't say this is the certain clientele that online learning is for. And one of the big things is I don't want online learning to be a gatekeeper and saying who can and can't be in the program. What I want to say is there are certain skill sets that you need to have in order to have success. But if you don't come to us with with those skill sets, we hope that by the end, as you go through our programming, that you and through how we work through the program, that we help you to develop those skill sets so that you have it in order to have success.
I guess I just had a question about when this is all said and done, and I'm just wondering more about the upkeep of the courses. My background was in actually course design, and I worked for a university not too far from here. And just one of the things we always had to do is every couple of years had to go back and like do more upkeep of courses and like revision of courses. I just want to make sure that that's taken into account and not, as we were talking about, being spread too thin right now with the team and the teachers that would be taking this on, that would also be considered of to keep everything relevant and top notch, I guess. Is that something that's being considered also as the upkeep of it?
Yes, considerations for upkeep is up to it. What it looks like, I don't know what it looks like yet, but I would say that it is not similar, but not the same as to how teachers have to revise for their own in-person learning as well to upkeep their curriculum as well. And Greg knows that our ninth grade program is annually revised and renewed with what's done there. So that is, and that will be part of, that ATTPS work that PLC or I think in some schools they call it the collaborative team time work in order to do that. But how that fully looks like, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking it will be a part of our PLC CT time with teachers in order to do the upkeep and the revisions for the courses. And then Celeste, I mean, if you also have ideas about how you think it could be implemented, please feel free to share as well, because I know stuff, but I don't know everything.
In the spirit of things to continue to think about as this evolves, one of the things that I love about our school district is, and again, I have that enrollment data in my mind, is just sort of like the demographics, right? And the diversity that we have in the student body. I think as this grows, and it is done well, to Mr. Yulin's point, as it will with you at the helm, I would love to make sure that the diversity that we see in person continues to carry over, right? It would sort of be not a great feeling if, because we know that it's online, you have a certain sort of privilege to technology and flexible schedules and different family makeups and all those things. And so I think that would be one thing to consider as we think about how can we project the makeup of the student body opting in for online learning, and how might that be taken into account so that we're not creating a space that ends up being more homogenous than the greater district, or develops a different sort of dominant culture that's not, within our schools.
Definitely, that is something that we are also very present and keeping in mind as we're thinking about how we roll out and how we provide access and how we provide resources so that students who want to take these courses can.
Right.
Cool. That was a thought that was running through my mind, similar but different. I have one of my recent graduates is on the autism spectrum, and there were several courses that he had a hard time doing in person. So we ended up, his counselor got us hooked up with some online courses in a neighboring district, which was really helpful. At the same time, I think his dream would have been to be all online, but I knew from a greater world perspective that he should really be in classes in person as much as he can, just because, social skills are extremely important. So yeah, I think it'll be a good thing for students like him that really do need to have some online options, but also it'll be a challenge for, as Aaron was kind of, I think, alluding to, a challenge for the schools to kind of encourage families to maybe make uncomfortable choices for their students that are going to be better in the long run. So yeah, the things to keep in mind.
Other questions?
I don't know if it's a question, but just more of a, as this continues to be developed, and as we look towards next year, just making sure that there is like a transition process, or kind of a smooth process, where a student gets into this online environment, gets into this process, and for whatever reason it just is not working out. For whatever reason, they thought it was going to be good with their schedule, or they thought it would be a better way of learning, but it just isn't working out, that they can somehow have a transition back into going into the classroom, or just making sure that everything's going to work, the time they've spent online, just make sure that's a part of it, the transition, because not everybody, because this won't work. We know some people will get into this for whatever reason, it might not work for them, and they're going to want to come back. So just, I'm sure you've already been thinking about that, but
Yes, it's also, so this is where we have to do a lot of communications with our current buildings, and talk to them about what could that transition look like. In talking with the at the secondary level, it'll be trimester by trimester base for the supplemental courses. But once we start thinking about the comprehensive programming, it's really thinking about how does that look like. And I'll be honest, I don't have a definite plan yet, but it is on my radar to be like, this is also part of the discussion that we need to have as we continue to plan forward. I guess my biggest question is kind of like, just if people are in support of moving forward, it doesn't have to be exactly the way that it's proposed here, but people are feeling like, I think this is something that we can get behind and support is for me my biggest thing. So I don't know, I don't know how to gather that, but that's what I want to know, is like, is there support to move this forward? And if there isn't, what could I be addressing in order to address concerns about why there wouldn't be support behind the plan?
I'll just quick reiterate kind of what I was hinting at, is I'm like super for the whole like supplemental courses or like credit recovery.
Yeah.
I think is absolutely brilliant. The whole comprehensive, I don't know. I mean, I think like what Aaron kind of alluded to, like there could be good and bad about that, but I think the supplemental courses and the credit recovery is like a brilliant way for our district to keep students in dollars here rather than having to spend money to get support from other districts.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say it was helpful for me to understand just the why, right? And I think like as we communicated out, you know, not the sense of like we need to keep students, but in general, that to me established the problem. And this is a creative solution that we are wanting to make sure that we as a district are not sort of falling behind the innovations that other districts are making.
I'm really for. I love online learning. Actually, I get really excited talking about online learning. So I love the entire idea, and I love the proposal that you put together. Again, like my background is in course design and online learning, and just I guess my only concern is not knowing if there's going to be a team in place. I know that there's teachers, but is there really a team in place? Like whether it be instructional designers or other course designers, like in the background helping. Because when I see on the proposal that like you have like 18 courses right now, like when I was an instructional designer, like that's a lot. That's a lot. And I had a team working with me, and we would be working. I think I would do like maybe 4 or 5 courses per like quarter. And so when I see like 18 on there that's already designed, and then you're going to add more on there, that's just like, ooh, I hope that you have a really good plan in place to keep it flowing and keep it going. So that's my only hesitancy, but I love the thought you put into it. So, yeah.
I'll look to Jake to find the dollars to develop that team with me. And Celeste, I did spend 2 years at the U. So I have some experience in that course design, probably not as much as you, but I just a little bit on that to help get started. But yes, so Jake, I'm asking for more money, more teammates.
Yeah, well, we're starting to figure that out actually. Like we have a meeting this week that that Dr. Chang pulled together, just kind of folks from around the district to start really just kind of as you're doing as well, just coming up with really good questions that we need to answer and the things that we just need to start thinking about. And in terms of our logistics and in terms of our big picture communication, all those different things that we think about as we develop anything that's new. So yeah, there'll have to be some dollars that we spend on making sure that this can be a successful program. And I think in the way that Dr. Chang talked about it as well, is like we're kind of trying to start small and go slow to go fast.
I don't know if I have a strong feeling either way about the proposal. I feel like I just don't have quite enough information, and some of that is just going to be hard to have. Like we're not going to really know how many people want to do this until we offer it. But I feel like the cost benefit analysis would be good to know, like how much is it going to cost us to do this? And, you know, what Mr. Yulin was saying too about like, how many resources is this going to take? And I mean, I feel like our schools already sort of, I don't want to say struggle, but you know, like we already don't have we're not like flush with staff and cash in our buildings. And so to like take some of that away potentially for a different deal gives me some pause, I guess. Not that it's not a good idea. And I do like the principle behind it. I don't know. I guess I just have some reservations about it.
And I'll say that we did too. We want to make it financially feasible as well. And that's why we've been having conversation with Sherry Thompson to make sure that the decisions that are made are financially, it makes financial sense for us to move forward. So she's a part of our conversations as well.
Yeah, and I think that is a big consideration too, Lizzie. Thinking about the impact on other schools' enrollment. Like, are we just competing with ourselves, or are we, you know, bringing kids back that we had lost, or are we bringing in kids from other districts? And so that those are all things that we're thinking about as well. Or is it even that we're helping to keep the kids that might potentially be leaving too. So.
I think related to what everyone's saying about the team and who is a part of it, someone in like my suggestion or consideration would be like a counselor of sorts that's a part of this as well. I mean, I saw the teachers and maybe I missed that part, but I do know from lots of experiences with FAS students that online learning is a real draw to kids. Even thinking before the pandemic, because it seems different, right? So if the school you're at, the mainstream school you're at isn't working, then something that's different, like right away, sounds more appealing. So really helping kids understand what it would be like and being able to catch them, because I just see kids who spend way too long online and it's not successful for them, and they're just kind of spinning their wheels. They're stuck. You know, a lot of the challenges that we ran into during distance learning of like, you know, I talked to parents and they're like, oh yeah, he said he logged into all his classes and had everything in. I'm like, oh no, I haven't seen him. You know, just it's harder to, you know, if you don't drop your kid off at school and pick them up and, you know, to know what they're doing, and you don't get those calls from attendance. So just kind of that piece of it, like whoever and whatever part of that team, because if you just have different online teachers during the day, that might get missed. You know, sometimes you might think they're just, you know, struggling in your class, but really it's all day. And then before you know it, you're 2 trimesters behind, and that's a big hole to dig yourself out of. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
we had that conversation too at the secondary level, is how do we ensure that that isn't the key. And so one of our things is about weekly check-ins and weekly milestones that students have to meet in order to ensure that they're making pace towards course completion. So that is part of the conversation too that we are having is how do we as teachers ensure in our classes that they're making progress towards course completion, but also is there a bigger oversight of checking in with students, and so having that counselor role. So in a comprehensive program, we will have to have counselors and psychologists be a part of our team. And so that would be part of the conversation, is how do we ensure that?
Oops, I was muted there. I was going to say thank you for all the really good feedback, really good things to bring forward. Appreciate your time tonight, Dr. Chang, and coming and supporting the program and promoting what you're thinking and moving forward on things. So thank you, and I appreciate all the feedback too. I think really good thoughts that we have now that we can bring back to our team as we continue and to think about this. And so I'm looking forward to the next kind of steps. And again, like Dr. Chang had talked about, this isn't a done deal, but it's for sure something that we're thinking about. So appreciate your time and effort, and we'll be back. I think that would be another thing to know as well, that we'll continue to keep you updated on the progress and how we're doing.
Yeah, and if there are any questions or considerations or comments later, feel free to email me. Jake has my email, so he can share that out later, or you can just ask Jake and then he'll ask.
Yeah, I can forward
We're
it on.
We're in the same office.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for your time, for your feedback. I really appreciate your time in listening to me on this. And I look forward to collaborating with you as we move forward with this online learning journey and what it could look like. All right, good night.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks, Dr. Chang.
All right. And we have our next guest that is already here with us, Josh Collins, who is our Director of Communications, and was here to talk a little bit about a kind of an overview of communication, and then also just some question answers and feedback that the group wanted to provide. We had some conversation at our November meeting and just talked about different ways that we connect with our community. So I asked Josh to come over and talk a little bit about communications and the overview of kind of what he does and how some of that work shows up in our communities. and how that all works together. And then also some question and answer time too. So take it away, Josh. Sorry that we're running a little bit later than we had hoped, but some really good conversation with our online learning feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always valuable for me to hear kind of the questions and feedback that folks have on all sorts of issues. This is an example of a lot of what I do is try to translate things to the community after it's already gone through a lot of these type of stages. So it's nice for me to see kind of the early sausage making parts of it at times. So, well, thanks for having me. I've been with the district for about 3 years, and for 2 of those, we've pretty much been in constant crisis. So it's, I sort of, when I describe kind of the communications office and the role, I sort of feel like I'm starting by saying, listen, I know that we could be doing things a lot better. And I know we could, but, and I'm really open and love to hear feedback and ideas and stuff like that. It's just, it's been a crazy time, and you all know what a crazy time it's been, but having just finished the referendum, which is a really positive thing, that's something that took up a lot of time. And then, COVID, of course, is a kind of a monumental challenge and piece that requires just so much communication out there. So I'm a one-person shop, and which is challenging, but you also don't want to have like a whole army of communications people when you're realizing that you don't maybe have enough teachers or you don't have enough staff in these areas. So it's that's always a balance. Just a little bit of my background. I was with the Minnesota Department of Education as their communications director during the Dayton administration. So I sort of bring kind of a policy perspective from kind of the state government, and so it's been good for me to kind of come into the district level and do some work that's actually closer to the delivery of education to children, because when you're at the state, you don't really get involved in that. Just to give you kind of an overview of just some of the stuff that we do, we have basically different, I call them channels or means of communicating with our community. And when we talk about our community, that's such like a generic term, but we've got students, we've got families, we have just general community members who may have had children who went through the district or may not have had children. And then you might have business people who have vested interests in the success of the school district. And we do a lot of work in that area. One of our main channels for communicating with people is our website and our newsletters. If you're a parent or a guardian, you have probably received a newsletter from each of the schools that your student has been a part of. And then we have a district newsletter that we've had going for, we kind of branded it as district news early in 2021. And that's kind of a bi-weekly newsletter. And then we have a printed newsletter that goes out quarterly-ish to the entire community. So that goes to like 30,000 homes. We no longer have a daily newspaper or even a weekly newspaper. A community paper, when we lost the Roseville Review, that was a real serious blow to our kind of our channels of communication to the public. And in this day and age, when you think, Aaron, I appreciate your comment that you love the printed one. In this day and age, you think printed newsletters are so quaint, so like old school. But whenever we survey people, their response is very similar to yours. It is just, people love it. And I shouldn't be surprised, because if you actually look at newspapers, the reason community newspapers survive is because people want to see their friends, their neighbors, their kids. They want to see them. They want to see the news about them. And so we try to somewhat replace the loss of the Roseville Review with putting more information or getting that info in that quarterly newsletter. We have We've been working, I work a lot with our cultural liaisons. So we have a very diverse district, and it's diverse in unique ways. So we find that sometimes just translating information into written forms is sort of like asking people to still fit in with our mode of what's the best communication. And then we get mad because people aren't able to assimilate into our means of communicating. So we're trying very hard to not do that. And a big part of that is working through our cultural liaisons. And if you haven't met them or seen them or interacted with them, they are incredible. They like the amount of like work they carry on their shoulders, the success of any of our messages getting out is very much influenced in great part by them. So they have personal connections with our families, with multilingual families, especially who, might not even culturally be used to the idea of engagement, right? So the idea of going to a school board meeting or getting involved with a principal, it just might be different, and so those cultural liaisons, I meet with them bi-weekly. I'm not the only reason they get together, but I attend those meetings just to give them an opportunity to know what's going on kind of at the district level and to make them aware of different issues we have coming up. So we'll put on their radar, if we're looking at, like as we get closer to rolling out, for example, online learning program, we would do a lot of work with them so that they could help really provide a more conversational translation of that information out to folks. They also maintain our cultural Facebook pages, and we have found quite a bit of success through those. So we have kind of affinity group of cultural Facebook pages, and we find that putting information up there, maybe our liaison will do a video of themselves talking about an issue, and having that there where it can be time shifted. So someone might find it and watch the video on their own time or engage with it in a different way. And we have found quite a bit of success engaging with our multicultural families through those Facebook pages. If you receive texts or robocalls, you might have heard my voice on those sometimes. We find that while not everybody has access, has a desktop computer at home, it's more and more common that families will have a smartphone, and that serves as sort of an essential communication hub for families. So that the kind of the importance and utility of texts has really increased in the last couple of years. So we do send out, and we obviously are limited on the number of characters you can send. So that forces us to be very concise, and we're able to send text messages and voicemails out separately to language groups. So we will send a lot of messages out where it'll go, like whenever there's if we're canceling school because of weather, the amount of things that go on behind the scenes are huge, because we have to send out a message translated into Somali and Karen and are kind of our 5 top languages. So we'll do a lot of that type of coordination to make sure we're getting information that is useful to the family, kind of that end user. We have, of course, our school board meetings. We recently made those more accessible. You had to kind of download a very specific thing if you didn't get the cable channel. If you didn't live in the community and subscribe to Comcast, it might be hard to participate in those board meetings. And if you've been to our boardroom, it's not very big. It's not necessarily the most inviting type of scenario. So making those live streamed on YouTube has been a benefit that we've done. And we're able then to get closed captions on them, so they're more accessible to people who might have disabilities. And we also, not just for board meetings, but for other features that we put, other videos that we put up, we try very hard to make sure we have captioning also in Spanish, because that's the largest group of our multilingual families besides English. Gosh, that's probably just kind of like the whirlwind overview of a lot of kind of those means of channels that we communicate through. I am excited to hear thoughts from you, or Jake mentioned that some of you had some questions that came up in the past. I'd love to be able to answer any of those if we kind of just want to move into a conversation now.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for that overview. I think the last time I can't remember what our conversation was around, but there was some questions around just how the different ways that we connect with families, and especially with our multilingual families as well.
I do think, and especially as we start coming out of COVID, which has really been feeding people information through, just blasting a fire hose of information. I do think we have an opportunity to sort of maybe reflect and not just go back to the way we were doing things, but I actually hope shift a little bit and become more inviting. I think from my perspective, from a communication standpoint, I think we overly rely on the cultural liaisons to carry the load of that communication. And so we've been experimenting with some new tools. I'm trying to remember, it's called Dialogue One. They have an app that some of you who are staff might have used already, but that has become a new tool where you can actually almost like FaceTime, bring in a third party to help do real-time translations. It's sort of like the old phone line when you can say, hold on, I'm gonna bring in an interpreter via the phone line. And this actually will do it through a smartphone, and you'll have the video of the speaker as well. We found that that integrates nicely with Zoom, which is, it's in some ways moving to Zoom for a lot of meetings has actually broken down some barriers of access for people to attend. And it allows us to do some of that real-time interpretation so that you don't have to feel like you're just getting the information after the fact.
Hey, Josh, I kind of maybe a question for you. You did a really great job. I kind of have an idea of what you were doing before, of course. But I think it would also be interesting to speak to the perspective of there must be opportunities, in your capacity as communications director to work with various individual schools, helping maybe PTA groups, or just what's that process of, schools coming to you, PTA groups coming to you to help disseminate information to some of their, like I know they have various email or listserv groups, or helping them build information that they can get out to their groups. Just kind of what's that process like?
Yeah, I would actually say that I really I have cats walking all around me. I would say I really have less involvement with the schools, and it's probably because I've just been so busy with kind of the crises of the day that I haven't been able to offer my services as much to the schools, especially to the PTA groups. So that's an area I'd love to be able to fill in as soon as kind of some of these crazy times begin to subside. I'd like to be able to offer more of that. Becky, from a principal perspective, it would be interesting to hear her talk maybe about how especially the communications department could help them more. The platform we use to send out our e-newsletters is antiquated, and our e-newsletters are far from deeply engaging. So I would like this summer, one of my hopes is to rebuild that system, is to shift to a new system that is going to give us more options to make them maybe interactive, but also just more visual, and try to work with the staff. So we have a decentralized kind of communication when it comes to those newsletters. Each of the schools, if you were to pull up Brimhall's and Central Park and Harambe's and look at them, they all are quite different. And usually it's like the building secretary who's assembling the stuff. And so sometimes, you might have someone who's much more computer savvy than someone else. And so that ends up kind of impacting the level of sort of quality of newsletter that's going out. I am hoping that in the future we can try to level that out and provide some support and training to them so that we have a bit more of a common capacity. And Lindsay, I know you've worked with some of those with the newsletters before, and I'm sure you have all sorts of ideas and opinions on what's good and bad with those. But I think we could do a better job of providing them district level content to push out. I think, I haven't done a survey of this, but I'd be curious, an informal poll from those of you who have kids. Are you more likely to read the newsletter that comes from your principal or from the district? Some people will be like, I don't ever open the district newsletter, but I'll look at my school newsletter because I know that's something that's super important. And so that's, sometimes we try to make sure we're hitting things that are important in multiple places, just trying to reach people where they are.
Josh, I'll chime in. It's not really, a question or a thought, but, in my volunteering with the RPD's Multicultural Advisory Committee and established by Corey Yankee, who's now over at the city leading their community relations from CityCom's perspective, I sort of giggled inside and sent him a text because, as you mentioned, with the loss of Roseville Review, that really took away such a nice way for you to reach the community. And Corey would say the exact same thing, and I have heard him say the exact same thing. So to your point around, as you're, after you're out of daily fires, of that thought around like, how are you diversifying different channels? How might you have, an ability to integrate some of your district comms into other sources? I think that Corey would welcome a sort of chat with you because he as well is evolving the city newsletter, evolving what it's meant to do, how it engages with Roseville residents, what really is the most pertinent information. And I feel like things that you would have to say through the district is something that is definitely fair game for content that he's wanting to disseminate as well. So if it's all right with you, I'd love to connect the two of you because I think you both are at sort of crossroads of you were maybe handed over things that were maybe grandfathered in that aren't really 2022 friendly. And you've been tasked with trying to innovate and sort of revolutionize it with the loss of something like the Roseville Review.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I appreciate that connection, Aaron. Thank you.
I just want to say that you have done a fabulous job. I felt, and come to think of it, as we're talking about the Roseville paper, I am in the Shoreview, or I'm in the Roseville district, but I'm like just 2 blocks north of Roseville. So I actually have benefited from the loss of the Roseville paper in some ways, because now the information that was put in the Roseville paper that people assumed I would get, and I never, I actually did subscribe to the Roseville paper on my own, because I was like, wait a minute, there's stuff I'm not, because if I get the Shoreview paper and they cover the Mounds View School District absolutely gorgeously, but I, hear not a peep of Roseville, obviously, because Shoreview is primarily Mounds View School District. So I don't fault them for it. But so I know everything that's going on in the Mounds View School District, all the kids that are in all the awards, but I don't, I don't see anything. So I was like, wait a minute. So, I did subscribe to the Roseville paper so that I could see what was going on. But so the loss of the Roseville paper has almost helped me get information more easily once from the district, because it's like, oh, cool. Now that stuff is showing up in the newsletter. So yeah, so I don't think there's very many of us in Shoreview that are in the, there's just like a little 2-block band, I think.
Sure,
but,
pockets here and there.
Or maybe a 4-block band, I don't know. But yeah, you've done a great job of keeping us informed. I've really been impressed with the work that you've done over these last couple of years.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
we're trying to do more. I'm hoping in this next year to do a little more with video. So the kind of the last video projects we did were highlighting some of the career and technical ed spaces that were revamped at Roz. And especially now with the new auditorium, I think there's some, now that construction's over, there's some visuals of the investments that we did in not just the high school, but also in the elementary schools. Like if you walk through Little Canada, like that's some of the most hot off the press construction and design going on in an elementary school anywhere in the state. So like, I think it would be just as that as an example, I'm hoping that we can do some highlighting of some of those pieces in the next year to just show off, the inside of schools. People like to see kids, and especially as we move forward and once we get rid of masks and stuff, people want to see smiling kids and smiling teachers. I'm hoping that's a project that we can get going in the coming year.
Well, Josh, thank you for coming out tonight and sharing a little. Well, I guess maybe you didn't come out, you got to stay inside. And
I did.
The nice part of Zoom, I guess, is that we get to be where we are and meet and connect from there. But I do appreciate you joining us tonight and sharing. And if folks have more questions potentially that they think about after the meeting, they can either send me, oh, there you go. You can send me an email and I can forward it to Josh, or if you take down Josh's email right there, he will be able to get back to you as well too. So just wanted to share another way of getting in connection with either one of us. A lot of times I feel like, you're processing during the meeting and then you think, oh yeah, I really wanted to ask that. So feel free to utilize that other form of communication as Josh would share.
And also, if you have, like, I am always there, every staff person, every parent, I'm convinced, knows of like a handful of amazing stories that aren't being told. So I am always hungry and looking for stories. Please do, let me know, send me teasers. I keep a tickler file of stories because I should say, because of my experience working at the state, I know the whole Twin Cities media community very well. And so sometimes I'll get a call from, Minnesota Public Radio. They'll be like, listen, somebody dropped out and Angela Davis needs somebody on this morning. Can you help us out? Or I also will get calls. The governor's office knows that I am always on the Johnny on the spot to help them with an event. So sometimes we'll end up, if there's something going on at a school that would work well for bringing the deputy governor out or the commissioner of education, I can help make those connections. So I need the news, I need the stories, the goods. So if you can help get those to me, that will just make it easier for me to help pitch the scoop. Exactly, you're speaking my language. That helps me. So please email me at any time. Feed me that good scoop.
Well, and I even want to say from, the school board, perspective that Josh, you do a good job of getting to a lot of the good stories, and there are, reinforced with everybody, there are a lot of good stories going on, even though we know what dominates the headlines, COVID-19, social unrest. I mean, the past year, I'm thinking, there's a lot of good things going on in this district, in every single school. Student groups winning awards still, not everybody has COVID. We're doing fine in the majority of our schools. We know that some of the negative things will maybe hit the headlines, so you're doing a good job of, I just want to reinforce, there's a lot of good things going on out there and you're getting that out, but we need to continue to get these things to our communications director. Because yes, there are a lot of good things going out there, during this pandemic. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'll hopefully let you get caught up a little closer to your agenda time. So
Yeah, thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it.
you bet. Be well, everybody. I'm gonna bid farewell.
All right, thank you, Josh. Well, the next part of our agenda is our enrollment report and demographic report. And I think just a quick summary would be to say that our enrollment trends had been going up, and we had worked with our state demographer to say, oh yeah, our enrollment is going to continue to go up. And then what they've told us now is that there is nothing that is normal now, and that trends are we really can't tell what's going to happen with the long-term pieces with some of these things. So our enrollment trend the last 2 years has gone down, and what we've seen is more at, well, in the kind of the 2020 2021 school year was more of an impact on our elementary schools. And then this past year, there was more of an impact at our secondary schools. And I think a lot of that is well, it happens to be with COVID and choices that folks can make depending on where they felt their student would be best in school, whether that's in person or distance or however. So we've seen some of those enrollment trends. So we really right now are kind of just hoping that, you know, our enrollment trends will continue to increase and to see that. The other piece as part of our demographics to know is, in summary, we're continuing to become more racially diverse within our schools, within our district. And then in terms of English learners, we have kind of just maintained the last 3 to 5 years around that 15% of our student population has been EL students. And then the last piece that I find is really interesting, and I keep having to go back to the trends as well, is our educational benefits, or our students that qualify for free and reduced price meals, has continued since that 2018-2019 school year to go down, which is kind of a surprise with us. And we do feel like that may have an increase. I think with school districts, we see the impact later than the real time that people do in their checkbooks. So I would think back to when we had the big the Great Recession in like 2008, 2009. We really didn't see the impacts from that and in the school district wise for another 2-3 years beyond that. And that's really shown in some of those, that district trend of our educational benefits on one of our slides, where we really jumped from, we were like in the mid 30s, and then we really jumped into the 40s and have stayed within the 40s for some time. And so I do think the pandemic is going to have an impact in the next few years as well. And also all of that is based on the amounts of we have to get people to fill out some paperwork that we get back from them as well. And it's been harder to connect and make sure that we are getting all of those forms back from folks, and it, kind of the red tape type of things that we have to do. So that might, with the pandemic, have had an impact as well on some of that. So to summarize, that would be the big summaries, is that we have seen, our enrollment trends going down a bit. We continue to have more racial diversity. We continue to maintain about our same English learner population, and our educational benefits have gone down. The need for that has gone down over the last 3 to 5 years. So that's kind of that whole 12-minute screencast just in about 2. And so wanted to just summarize that for you, and to see I did put some questions in our agenda. We don't have to stick to those, but just things, questions that you might have, or something in the data that you would be like, oh, I want to share that with others. I wish people knew about that, about Roseville. Anything that you thought was like a concerning trend, or data that from your experience or perspective just misses about what our district is. So any thoughts on those types of things? We have a few minutes to chat. One last thing that I'll say as well is I always think this is an important report for this group as we are thinking about who our students are, and talking through what the curricular needs are of our students and who is represented and who's not represented within our curriculum. And so it is an important, I do find it to be an important report just to look at for those things that are coming up in our curriculum review. So.
I was wondering, is the lower amount or the non-change in English language learners, is that possibly because of like not allowing as many refugee families in? And now I saw in the, I forget which paper it was, but that we're going to get a lot of new Afghan families to Minnesota, which I'm super excited about. Would that start bringing our numbers back up, do you think? Or
I do actually think that I do think policy definitely has an impact on the amount of immigration over the last 5 years or so, and then also within the pandemic too, there's just less immigration that we've had. So I do think that will probably be a trend that continues to go upward. And yes, I've heard the same thing too around that we will have some Afghan refugees that will be coming to the Twin Cities area and potentially into the Roseville area as well. So that could also increase some of our numbers as well too. So. But good question.
I guess, Jake, in that trend of lower enrollment, and I believe you had shared this at the beginning of last school year, or maybe toward the end of last, we had a sense of where we were losing those students to. Is there any more just sort of clear data around direct, or is it a little bit of all of the different things?
Yeah, we did, especially in the that 2021, 2020, 2021 school year. We lost a lot of students to private schools, and that was because more of those private schools were in person and offering in-person learning for especially at our elementary schools. We have seen kind of the reverse of that this year, where we had more students that came back from some of those private school or parochial schools and come back to our district because they wanted distance learning or in-person learning options, and still felt like the quality of education was what they wanted in Roseville. But then this year there was a difference because we did have, as Dr. Chang talked about, we had families that wanted in-person or an online experience because they just didn't feel right about in-person yet, and wanted to have an online experience. So we did lose folks, especially at the more of that secondary level, as we didn't completely offer that either. So that was some of the things. We also have had more families that have been homeschooling or going into like homeschool cooperatives as well. That's where we've kind of lost some of our folks too. And I think that's pandemic related as well. Some people found that, oh, I'm home, this actually works for us. I think I can make this work. And if we're a part of a larger cooperative too, there might be skills that I don't have that somebody else can provide as well too. So those are two, I would say, two of the biggest factors in the last couple of years. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, I won't force it out of you then. But thank you for.
I did have one more.
Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead,
Jake.
Aaron. Yeah, thank you.
Who, in terms of like other local like legislators, for example, like who else besides us and your team like is seeing sort of this enrollment data? And that's probably a naive question, but just
Yeah. So we actually provide it to the school board, and so anybody that that came out, I think in November that we did or maybe late October that we did the enrollment report with, and so anybody that joins that meeting, and we record those as well too. And then I typically try and get out to organizations or groups that are thinking about like who is who in Roseville. So kind of I've been to some church, community church groups that ask, oh yeah, we would like to know more about who are the students in Roseville. So I'll kind of bring a pared down version of this to that group and to some of the communities and just share that with them. So I've gone to the Kiwanis group as well and shared that the Corpus Christi Church, Roseville Lutheran Church have both had that. And then that's kind of spurred on some other things as well too, that other groups will come and say, oh yeah, we'd just like to know. And typically it's groups that don't have students in school anymore. They really are still interested in the district, but just don't necessarily have an in with one of their students within our district. So yeah.
And I guess this is more a question for Todd, but Todd, do you get sort of engagement or questions around this from like our other local elected officials like city council? Like, are those council members interested on this sort of data and state of enrollment? I imagine so, but I'm just curious the kind of engagement you get.
Not, it's a good question, Aaron. Not a lot of engagement, but issues such as enrollment and demographic information does come up from time to time. We have these what we call like these local government meetings where we're getting together with local legislators, county commissioners, and various council members from all the communities that are within Roseberry Schools boundaries. And so sometimes some of this information does come up. You know, a council member will ask, you know, where did we lose possibly enrollment to, or, you know, and it's something that not just our district goes through, but you know, other districts have lost to homeschooling due to COVID-19 and various other factors. But yeah, from time to time, it is something that generates discussion. And council members, legislators know that Jake, you know, Josh, you know, we have all this information we can provide anytime that they need it for their purposes.
One of the things that I did think was interesting too was that I did look at the last City of Roseville flyer or whatever they call it, bulletin, and it looked like they're trying to expand their equity work as well within the work that they're doing, and that was a pleasant surprise to see within their. I think they have a person that's actually hired now to be an equity focused specialist, and so that would be a great partnership.
Yep.
Yeah. That I don't think we've explored that I think would be really great. And so that would be another key possibility of partnership too.
That's a great idea.
So somebody is out there reading the flyers.
I'll let Corey know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, how did those of us that don't live in Roseville get on that list, huh?
Right. Just comes to my mailbox.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure Corey would love to hear that people are trying to get on his list.
Right.
Yes, it's funny. I mean, I live in Shoreview, but I do most of my shopping in Roseville or Arden Hills, except for the Target. I guess.
Well, thank you all again for being a part of our committee and for being engaged this evening. I think the last thing I will do is just an ask to see if there's anybody who would be interested in being the co-chair with me for the rest of this year. The benefit of you, if you decide to do it this year, is that you only have half of the meetings left to help with. So, you know, you could see that as like, hey, you know, I get a bargain for the year of just 4 meetings, right? So that could be a good reason why you might want to try co-chairing this year, right? And also looking for somebody that could be a representative to our materials review committee. So and a possible alternate too. So possibly 3 different roles if people are interested. Anybody interested in co-chairing this year at the bargain price of half off? Anyone feeling it? I know it's really hard to commit, and it is, you know, in with all of these crazy pandemic things and keeping up on communications and all of the changes and everything and the busyness that goes around with it, I understand too. And we can go through the year without a co-chair, and that's all right as well. But if you are thinking about it and you're interested, I try to make it as easy as possible too. We just meet over Zoom or phone call and just talk through kind of agendas and topics and things like that. So not too time intensive, but just helpful to have another perspective as I go through and plan out the meeting. So if you're interested later, you can always email me as well, and I won't put you on the spot. But is there anybody that is interested in potentially doing the materials review? That's a time where a group, if we do have a library book or curriculum, maybe it's a textbook or a book that students are reading as a part of their reading curriculum or social studies, whatever that is, that potentially like a community member, a parent, a student might challenge. We do have this committee that meets and has conversations. So it wouldn't be just you, it would be you, some staff members, other families, school board member, and we all meet and discuss and have a conversation about that material that they are objecting to, and then figure out the next steps for that. So that I always kind of hesitate to share that, because then I say, we haven't had one in a while, and then all of a sudden, bam, you know, we have one, and then we do. So it could be something that we actually meet with, and it might not be even something that happens during the year. So it always just kind of depends on whether we meet or not. So is anybody interested and would be willing to serve on that? All right, thank you, Aaron. That would be great.
Thanks,
Oh,
Aaron.
I was gonna volunteer too, but
Oh, Celeste, I'll put you down as well. And then
I'll fight you for it, Aaron.
yeah,
Oh, no,
right,
no.
exactly. So if we do have something that comes up, I will connect with both of you. And then we can figure out if you both would like to serve on that, or if, you know, the dates don't work for one or the other, we can always figure that out as well too. It's great to have more than one that we can pull from too. So
Yeah.
Thank you. That is excellent. And that is all that I have for us this evening. But I do again want to really say thank you, because I know there's so many things that can pull from your time that keep you busy, and whether it's your own children, families, activities, communication that you're reading from the schools or the community, definitely keep you busy out there. So I appreciate you coming and being engaged and being involved in our group as well. So thank you. Stay warm. It looks like our temperatures are going to warm up through this week. It'll feel like a real like Hawaii to us, right, Aaron?
That's
be
why you
like a
see
nice warming
Minnesotans,
trend.
yeah. That's why you see Minnesotans when it's 30 wear shorts.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Maybe you brought
I
the
am,
sunshine
yeah.
and warmth back with you. I don't know. But thank you again and have a great rest of your month. We actually have kind of a funny month coming up. It's really like 6 weeks in between this meeting and our next one. We actually don't meet until the end of February. So February 28th will be our next meeting. So you can put that on your calendar if you don't have it already. It just ends up kind of being funny Mondays in February that just don't really work out for how things go. I figured you wouldn't want one on Valentine's Day. And then I think the week after that is President's Day. So we kind of have some funny Mondays in February. And February 7th is my birthday. So I said, well, maybe we shouldn't do it on that day either. So, so thank you again. Have a great month and we'll see you on February 28th.